few years as well. Obviously, we started with the arcade cabinets, put a coin in, get a life sort of thing. We moved to the home consoles, one and done purchases. Suddenly, these consoles connected to the internet, and then you had your DLC, your expansion packs, and now we're talking Fortnite, season passes, all cosmetic DLC. It's just so much more options than there was before to fund a game. And I wonder if someone could sort of explain that better than I just did.
I mean, I'll take a shot. Just in the earlier days of console, it really was like launching a movie. It was all about, you knew how much the life of product was going to sell based on like the first hour of sales at GameStop. Essentially, like you could project things out, and if you didn't launch successfully out the door big, there's no coming back. So it's just like a movie. When a movie comes out, it typically, it's all about that opening weekend, and there's a curve that you could look at pretty specifically to say how well that will, sell thereafter. And there's still big console games that follow that model, but like the industry has obviously become so much more diverse now with downloadable content and, these games like Fortnite, like you just said, that other people will be more experts on the panel, that are essentially like social networks, and that it's more of a slower build. It's not, release and everything the first weekend. It's more, how do you build an audience of engagement and engaged users over time? And you see on those models, it's like the games get bigger and bigger over time.
More of a software as a service approach for some developers,
Yeah, totally. I think and that's why I think it's fascinating how this will evolve from the business models that we are talking about today when it comes to like with Fortnite and free to play and digital economy that's within that. You probably can't even imagine 5-10 years from now when the likes of Epic Games, Tencent and Riot pull off and execute the strategy they're deploying and developing, and you have to look at what the companies they're acquiring and what their roadmaps look like to see that they are building the metaverse, they are building the social networks of the future. Is why Reed Hastings, Mr. Netflix says, I don't compete with HBO, I compete with Fortnite and Epic. It's because they're going to grab the eyeballs of that generation, and therefore the business models they deploy, in the same way that entire industries were built off the back of Instagram and Facebook and Weibo. You'll see exactly the same happen with the likes of these big publishers and the games they create and the metaverse they create. The amount of business models we've built from within those games is going to be absolutely fascinating. And you're starting to see this with it's not just like the loot boxes, but what brands are bringing into these games and enabling people to purchase, such as skins, etc. Where this is going to go is going to be fascinating.
It's a very interesting crossover of sort of different mediums, especially in entertainment. Say the launch of Terminator Dark Fate had the skins of all the characters from that movie, and I think it's Gears of War and a few other games, and I think that's a really good launch in the entertainment space. Have I just distracted myself there? What was I going to talk about?
I think that's what you touch on there, right? Is why it's so interesting. And we mentioned cloud computing earlier on, and that's where it's going. Where you don't just have what you currently have, which is I play and I can stream it and people can watch it, but that interaction that will come from what I'm playing and the viewer will start to join the dots into the viewer being able to change the gameplay. It's going to be super fascinating, and off the back of that, a huge amount of other business models will be created. In the same way now, someone will pay and subscribe and donate to a person's channel. How money will transfer between what you can do to the game while they're playing it, and what you can change and how much it will cost you will be fascinating.
It seems to me that Twitch is in a very good position to sort of fulfill that social media interactivity media space we've been talking about, and I have spoke to the guys at Twitch who develop all these custom solutions for the brands and whatnot, and they're absolutely open to any ideas, so that will be exciting to keep a track on. Earlier this month, I interviewed Zynga about the launch of Farmville and the more recent versions of that. And it just struck me when you were talking about the next social network being inside a game, how previously, Farmville became huge on Facebook and it was a game inside a social network.
I think the indie space is something I certainly noticed in my time working in digital distribution. You know, you'd have games, I think as tools become more widely available, and you don't need a big publisher necessarily to have a huge success, especially on the PC side. I think you know, it's given rise and prominence to these really small teams who are able to build these hugely successful games. I mean, PUBG is a good example of a game that, you know, launched, I think it's still in early access. I'm not sure if it is on Steam, but you know, it launched, and I remember at Sega, this suddenly creeping up the charts, and then it just sitting there solidly for, you know, nearly 18 months. I think GTA 5 used to knock it off, and then it would come back. And that's, you know, started out small, and now they've created this huge sort of studio publisher out of that. So I think it's really exciting that, you know, there's, I think, especially Steam and sort of the green lighting process they used to have, self-publishing. There's a lot of criticism around it of people being able to come, and the amount of games that are released on Steam, I think, yearly, but equally, I think it gives an opportunity for these games to come through the ranks that traditionally would have needed to go and pitch to a big publisher and all that kind of stuff. And now they kind of have, you know, control over their own title and its destiny, and building out those audiences in that community.